one point, they stopped at a food truck. Surveillance cameras captured them smiling, talking, waiting for their food. They looked happy, carefree, alive. It was just another night. On the night of May 30th, 2005, the island of Aruba was alive with celebration. Music spilled out of beach bars. Tourists filled the streets. Among the crowd was an 18-year-old girl from Alabama named Kaylee Holloway. She had just graduated high school with honors. She was preparing to attend college. She had her entire life ahead of her. This trip was supposed to be a reward, a celebration, a memory she would carry forever. Kaylee was traveling with over 100 classmates from Mountain Brook High School. They spent their days swimming, laughing, and exploring the island. On the evening of May 30th, Kaylee and her friends went to a popular nightclub called Carlos and Charlie's. At night, they visited clubs and restaurants, enjoying their freedom before adulthood began. Witnesses later said she was smiling, relaxed, happy. She danced, she talked with friends, and at some point during that night, she met a young man named Joran van der Sloot. He was 17 years old, tall, calm, confident. He lived on the island. He knew the area. He told people he was helping Kaylee get back to her hotel. Around 1:30 a.m., witnesses saw Kaylee leaving the nightclub with him. She got into a car with Joran and two of his friends. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. The next morning, Kaylee didn't show up for her flight home. At first, her friends thought she overslept. But when hotel staff checked her room, her belongings were still there. Her passport, her clothes, her luggage, everything. Except Kaylee. Panic spread quickly. Her classmates searched the hotel. Teachers called her phone. No answer. When her mother, Beth Holloway, received the call, she immediately flew to Aruba. She refused to believe her daughter would disappear voluntarily. She knew something was wrong. Authorities began questioning people who had seen Kaylee that night. Soon, attention focused on Joran van der Sloot. He admitted he was the last person seen with her. He claimed he dropped her off at the hotel around 2:00 a.m., but security guards said that never happened. He changed his story, then changed it again. Each version had contradictions. Each version raised more questions. Search teams combed the island. They searched beaches, forests, abandoned buildings. Nothing. No body. No clothing. No trace. It was as if Kaylee had vanished into thin air. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The case exploded into international news. People across the world followed every update. Parents hugged their children tighter, because this wasn't supposed to happen. Not here. Not like this. But before we continue, if stories like this matter to you, if you believe the truth deserves to be told, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Because some stories don't end when the headlines fade, and some mysteries still demand answers. Now let's continue. As investigators pressed harder, cracks began to show in Joran's story. But its layout was unusual. The entrance was on the second floor, not the first. The bottom level had bedrooms. The middle level had the kitchen and living room. And the top level had 2 more bedrooms. It was the kind of house where people came and went often. Friends visited. Parties happened. Doors opened and closed. Movement was normal. Noise was normal. Nothing about it seemed vulnerable. But that layout would later raise terrifying questions. Questions about how someone could enter unnoticed, move freely, and leave behind devastation. Saturday night, November 12, 2022 began like any other Saturday night. There was no fear, no warning, no sign that anything was wrong. Kaylee and Madison went downtown. The streets were alive. Music played from bars. Students filled the sidewalks. They laughed. They took photos together. They visited familiar places. At one point, they stopped at a food truck. Surveillance cameras captured them smiling, talking, waiting for their food. They looked happy, carefree, alive. It was just another night. Meanwhile, Xana and Ethan spent their evening together. They visited friends. They enjoyed the comfort of familiarity, of routine. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming, just young people living their lives. By around 2:00 a.m., they had all returned home. The house grew quiet. Lights turned off. Doors closed. Sleep came, or at least, they believed it would. The hours between 4:00 and 4:30 a.m., what happened next would take investigators months to piece together. And even now, the full horror of those moments is difficult to comprehend. Sometime between 4 o'clock and 4:30 a.m., someone approached the house. They did not knock. They did not announce themselves. They entered silently, carefully, deliberately. Police would later believe the killer entered through a sliding glass door on the second floor. It was a vulnerable entry point, easy to access, easy to leave. Inside, the house was dark, quiet. Still, the killer moved through the rooms, step by step, floor by floor. They carried a knife, a weapon chosen for closeness, for silence, for control. The attacks were sudden, brutal, personal. Each victim was targeted, each life taken in moments. There were no screams heard by neighbors, no alarms triggered, no warning. And then, just as quietly as they had entered, the killer left, vanishing into the night, leaving behind 4 lifeless bodies, and a mystery that would haunt the nation. Morning comes, hours passed. Morning arrived. Sunlight touched the house, but inside, nothing moved, nothing changed. 2 surviving roommates had been inside the house during the attacks, but they lived on the lower level, separated, protected by distance. They had no idea what had happened upstairs. Not yet. Time continued, until nearly noon. Then, something was wrong. One of the roommates would not wake up. Calls went unanswered. Concern grew. Fear began to form. At 11:58 a.m., a call was placed to 911. At first, they thought one of their friends had simply passed out and wouldn't wake up. But when police arrived, they discovered the truth. 4 young lives had been taken. The town was thrown into panic. Students locked their doors. Parents called their children in fear. Rumors spread faster than facts. Who could do this? Why this house? Why these students? Police searched for answers, but the killer had left almost nothing behind. No clear motive, no obvious suspect. Just fear and silence. Then, investigators revealed something chilling. A surviving roommate had seen someone that night, a figure dressed in black, wearing a mask, walking past her in the hallway. He didn't speak. He simply walked out the door and vanished into the darkness. The case dominated headlines. People wondered if the killer would ever be caught. And that's when investigators found their first real clue. A white car, captured on surveillance cameras. It had driven past the house multiple times that night. Slowly, deliberately, as if watching, waiting. Police traced the vehicle to a graduate student studying criminology. His name was Bryan Kohberger. He lived in nearby Washington state. He studied criminal behavior. He understood investigations. He knew how killers were caught, or so he thought. Police quietly began tracking him. They monitored his movements, collected evidence, watched, waited. Then, in December 2022, they made their move. He was arrested at his parents' home, thousands of miles away. The arrest shocked the nation. A criminology student, accused of committing one of the most horrifying crimes in modern college history. Investigators later revealed they found DNA evidence on a knife sheath left at the scene. It matched him. The mistake that changed everything. The one thing he left behind. Before we continue, if you're drawn to real crime stories like this, stories that reveal how investigators uncover the truth piece by piece, make sure you subscribe to this channel, because some of the most shocking cases are the ones that seem impossible to solve, and the next story might be even more disturbing. Now let's continue. After his arrest, more details emerged. Police believed he had studied the victims, watched them, observed their routines. His phone records allegedly showed he had been near their house multiple times before the murders. Late at night, in the dark, watching, waiting. But the biggest question remained. Why? Why them? Why that house? Why that night? Some investigators believe he wanted to experience the crime, to understand it, to feel what it was like. Not as a student, but as the killer. The town of Moscow would never be the same. Students moved away. Parents feared sending their children back. The sense of safety was gone, replaced by a single terrifying truth. Evil doesn't always look like evil. Sometimes it looks like the quiet student, the observer,